There is a thing I did that she never knew about. I am going to tell you what it was. First, I need you to understand the kind of man who does something like that, not to excuse it, to make sure you understand that it wasn't kindness. I have not been kind. I want to be precise about that. Kindness is something you offer to someone who needs it from a position of choice. What I did from a position of, I am still working out the correct word. Need is too honest. Compulsion is closer. Inevitability is perhaps the most accurate and also the most humiliating. She did not know I did it. I made sure of that. That is the part I keep returning to in the hours after the third bell, when the castle is quiet. And I am not what I did. The thing itself is almost beside the point. What I cannot stop examining is that I hid it, that I, who have signed executions without blinking, who have stood before men begging and felt nothing move in me, hid a small act of whatever it was from a woman who wasn't even looking. That is the confession. The rest is just detail. The Vorn kingdom runs on a simple mechanism. Make the cost of resistance higher than the cost of submission. My grandfather built this. My father sharpened it. I inherited it the way you inherit a debt, fully formed, already paid for, by people I never met, requiring only maintenance. I was good at maintenance. I had ruled 26 years without a single miscalculation. I say this not with pride. Pride is for men who had something to prove. I say it the way you state a structural fact about a building. It was load-bearing, and it held. What I was not good at, what I had no category for, no word, no reflex, was doing something for someone else without a reason, not without a justification. I was excellent at justifications. In 26 years, I had justified every betrayal, every execution, every treaty, broken before the ink dried. What I could not do, had never needed to do, was act for someone without getting anything back. I had not noticed this was missing. Then she arrived, and for 3 months I told myself I had simply noticed an inefficiency, a problem with how the library was organized, an irregularity in the Eastern archives that required correction. That is what I told myself. She had been assigned to catalog the Eastern records. This was administrative, routine. The Eastern archives had been in disorder for 11 years because no one I trusted with language would spend 6 months in a room without windows. She would. I read her application twice. It was precise, unsentimental, and contained one sentence that I underlined without knowing why. Disorder in a record is not a clerical problem. It is a failure of memory, a kingdom that cannot remember itself, cannot defend itself. I underlined it. I do not underline things. The first time I saw her in person, she was standing at my window, not the window in her archive room, my window in my library. She was looking at the courtyard with the attention of someone memorizing a route. I said, "That room is not part of your assignment." She said, without turning, "The window is the best light in the castle." I needed to check a date on a water-damaged scroll. I was going to ask permission. You were not here when I arrived. This was accurate. It was also not an apology. I should have corrected this. I noted, with some clarity, that I was choosing not to. What she did that no one else did. What I noticed, in the way you notice a stone in a boot you have worn a long time, was that she'd looked at me without accounting for the fact that I was the king. Not disrespect, not defiance. Something more unsettling than both. Indifference to the fact of power, combined with genuine attention to the thing beneath it. She looked at me the way you look at a structural problem, with interest, with a patience that says, I will find where this is broken. What I did not know then, what I could not have known, was that she had already found it. She had found it 11 days before she told me. She sat on the information, turning it over, deciding what kind of man I was, before she decided whether to trust me with what she knew. She was deciding. I was the king of 23 provinces. She was deciding about me. I have spent the time since trying to determine when exactly that became something other than an affront. I moved her table 3 feet closer to the fire. This was practical. The eastern wing is cold in winter. This is a documented fact. The fact is not sufficient as a complete explanation. And I understood that at the time. I told the head steward that the library's firewood allocation was to be reclassified as administrative priority. I did not tell him why. He did not ask. He had been in my service 17 years, and he understood the specific kind of question I did not welcome. She worked past the permitted hours on a Tuesday. The guards noted it. The report came to me, as all reports do, at the morning briefing. I filed it without response. My counsel watched me file it with the careful, specific silence of men archiving information for later use. I attended 3 fewer council sessions that month. When I returned, General Aldrich, who has served since my father's reign and is therefore permitted a limited category of observation, looked at me across the table and said nothing for 4 seconds. Then he discussed troop rotations. I answered the tactical version of the conversation. I understood later that there had been another version of it. The thing she found in the archives, the thing she had been sitting on for 11 days, was a record that implicated my late Treasury Minister in a diversion of funds that had starved 3 villages in the northern reach. Not enough to die, enough to slow. She brought it to me on a Wednesday. She placed it on my desk. She said, I found this while cataloging the Eastern grain records. I thought you should have it before anyone else did. I said, why? She considered the question with genuine attention, which is its own form of unnerving. She said, because I don't think you knew. No one in 26 years had offered me that. The assumption of ignorance instead of complicity. The small, precise mercy of imagining I might not have done it on purpose. My hands on the desk were completely still. That evening I had 3 villages in the northern reach reclassified in the grain ledgers. The adjustment was backdated. The record was corrected. The villages received what they were owed. No announcement, no reparation ceremony, no document bearing my seal that would require explanation. It was handled. By morning, it had always been handled. She never knew I did it. I want to be precise about what this was and what it was not. It was not penance. Men who perform penance require witnesses. I had erased the witnesses. It was not kindness, for the reasons I have already explained. It was not strategy. There was nothing to be gained. The villages were too small to matter politically. The Treasury Minister was already dead. What it was, and I tell you this with the discomfort of a man who has had too much time to think about it, was the first thing I had done in 26 years that I did for someone without getting anything back. For her, because she had assumed I hadn't known, because she had offered me, without asking anything in return, the possibility that I was better than I had been. She was gone 3 months later, a transfer she requested. She said the Eastern archives were complete. They were. I did not prevent the transfer. I have told myself many things about why I did not prevent it. The most recent version is also the most honest. I didn't know what I would do if she stayed. There is a record in the Eastern archives, in her handwriting, on the final page of the grain ledger for the northern provinces. The last entry, in the margin, in pencil, not in the official record, not in ink, corrected. She didn't sign it. There was nothing to sign. It was already done. I don't know if she was talking about the ledger